This is Algebra 2. I think I only have probably about 6 students left in Algebra 2, maybe 7, because this was a senior class. So I'm going to be teaching to about 7 or 8 students. I'm going to wait just a few minutes to see if I have several join. And I'm going to try to get it on my laptop so I can kind of see. Algebra 1's video today went blurry. I'm hoping this one doesn't. I restarted the Wi-Fi. Looks like Kinley is here and Claire's here. Hey girls. Daniel, this is Algebra 2. I've already posted Algebra 1's video to YouTube. Alright, it looks like it's clear. That's good. Today went blurry. Okay. Alright, if y'all have already done, Claire's here. Oh, hang on, let me mute this. It's going to confuse me. Alright, if y'all have already done Lesson 1 and Lesson 2, you know that we have been factoring. And Lesson 2 was on factoring trinomials, and if you understood that, which it was a pretty easy lesson, you're going to understand this, because this is really easy too. This kind of problem does get harder, but we're not going to get into those. We're just going to do the easy ones. I'm going to start with a review right here. This is a review of what we did in Lesson 2. Alright, so here we go. Algebra 2, today's April 7th. We're going to be factoring trinomials. Now, in Lesson 2, we learned all of our trinomials looked like this. They did not have a number in front of n squared. That number is called a coefficient. So they did not have a coefficient in front of the quadratic term, the term that has the exponent of 2. And I'm going to review those kind of trinomials. Remember, whenever you factor a trinomial, you're doing the FOIL method backwards. And you always start by putting down your 2 parentheses. And you always split the n to the second apart into the first terms of each parentheses, n times n. And then you multiply 2 numbers together at the end to get negative 20. And they're going to have to add up to be negative 1. So the factors of negative 20, let's just worry about 20. You've got 1 times 20, 2 times 10, and 4 times 5. And you can look at those pairs and see which ones you could add together to get a negative 1 if one of the terms was negative. And it's the 4 and the 5. You want your 5 to be negative. And because you want your 5 to be negative, it would be minus 5 and plus 4. Okay, so that's your answer. That's what we did in Lesson 2. I hope everybody understood that one. And now all of these examples, and you can see we only have 3 examples today. This is going to be short and quick and easy, because all of these, and I checked to make sure they did this on IXL, they're all going to have greatest common factors. And when you pull out the greatest common factor, your problem is going to end up like this one. And so let's just get started on example 1. We're going to factor 3x squared minus 8x plus 24. So when you look at all 3 terms, before you start worrying about your 2 parentheses, you want to pull out a GCF. And remember, we did the GCF in Lesson 1. So if you don't remember how to do greatest common factor, look back at Lesson 1. All 3 of these terms can be divided by 3, so that is your GCF. You pull your GCF out front, and then you just divide 3 into all 3 numbers. When you divide 3 into this first term, 3x squared, you get x squared. when you divide, because 3 goes into 3 one time and you don't have to put the 1 in front. When you divide 3 into 18x, you get 6x. And when you divide 3 into 24, you get 8. So now, if you'll look inside your parentheses, you'll notice it is a trinomial. It's just like this one we reviewed with. So you've got to take it one step further, and now you've got to leave the 3 out front, and you've got to take this trinomial and factor it. So we're going to put our 2 parentheses down. Bring your 3 down in front. Trinomial, so you want to split the x's apart because it's x squared, and you want to put an x in each parentheses. At the end of your trinomial, you have a positive 8. The only way to get a positive 8 when you multiply the last terms together is for them both to have the same term. The same sign. And for them to have the same sign, they're going to match whatever this middle term is. So they're going to both be minus. And then the factors of 8 that will add up to be 6 are 4 and 2. So you're going to say minus 4 and minus 2. And then we need to just check. X times x is x to the second. To get your middle term, negative 6x, that's where you have to add the negative 4 plus the negative 2, and that gives you negative 6x. And then your positive 8 you get by negative 4 times negative 2, and that's a positive 8. And that is your final answer. I'm going to wait for just a second. And Claire or Kinley, one of my Algebra 2 students, if that made sense to you, just, say yes. And then I'm going to move on. Can you just type yes for me if you understood it? No if you didn't. Okay, good. Thank you, Kinley. My Algebra 1 students that are on here, your Algebra 1 lesson, I did that this morning, and you can find that video now at YouTube. All right, example 2 and example 3. These are all done the same way. If you'll look on example 2, we're going to factor 4x squared plus 64x minus 68. If you'll notice, all 3 terms can be divided by 4. And so when you divide 4 into that will first pull our 4 out for our GCF. So we're going to pull a 4 out front. Put your parentheses, and now divide 4 into every term. So when you divide 4 into 4x squared, you get 1x squared, and you don't put the 1 down. Divide 4 into 64, and that goes 16 times, and you put your x down. And then 4 divided into 68, that's going to be minus 18. Okay, so we just divided 4x squared, 64x, and 68 by 4, and got this resulting trinomial in the parentheses. So now we can factor this trinomial like we did on the previous example. So let's bring the 4 down in front, put your 2 parentheses, and then just factor x squared plus 16x minus 17. So we're going to split the x's apart and put 1x in the front of each parentheses. 17, now the only way you can factor 17 is 1 times 17. You just got to make sure you have the right sign with the right number, because 17 is negative. That means you've got to have one factor is positive, one factor is negative. When you add the 2 factors, you want to get a positive 16. So that means you need your plus with the biggest number, plus 17 and minus 1. And once you write it down, before you enter it in iNow, just check it, because you don't want to miss it because of your sign. You've got positive 17 times negative 1 is negative 17, so that checks. positive 17 plus negative 1 equals a positive 16 because you have to subtract them and the signs are different. And so that checks. And so that is your answer. 4 times x plus 17 times x minus 1. And then our final example, example 3. Look at all 3 terms, and they can all be divided by 5. Now, I believe in all of the IXL problems that I came across, because I went through them before I did my examples, they all have a GCF of the first number in front of the x squared. This lesson in Algebra 2 is really easier than the lesson in Algebra 1 with these trinomials. So our GCF is 5. We're going to pull the 5 out front. Divide 5 into all 3 of these terms. 5x squared divided by 5 is just x squared. And then minus 20x divided by 5 is 4x. And then negative 60 divided by 5 is negative 12. So now you have your trinomial x squared minus 4x minus 12. And we're going to put our 2 parentheses down with 5 out front. Take your x squared and split it apart. Put an x in the front of each parentheses. And then you've got negative 12 at the end. You've got to multiply the 2 factors at the end to give you negative 12. And those 2 factors that multiply to be negative 12 have to add up to be negative 4. Okay, so because they have to be a negative 12, you want the signs to be different. One has to be a plus, one has to be a minus. And then think of the factors of 12. And I'll just list them right here. Factors of 12. 1 times 12, 2 times 6, 3 times 4. And you want to pick the pair that when you add together, remember one's got to be positive and one's got to be negative. You're going to get a negative 4. So you're going to use the 2 and the 6, and you're going to have the negative with the 6. So that would be a plus 2 and a minus 6. Once again, check your signs before you submit your answer on IXL. Negative 6 times positive 2 is negative 12. And negative 6 plus 2 is negative 4. So that is your answer. And that is it, really. There's not anything more difficult than this, really, I don't think, on your IXL. In your IXL assignment, this time make sure you go to Algebra 2 on IXL. Again, make sure you go to Algebra 2, Lesson I3. And make sure you get a SMART score of 80. You can go further than 80 if you want to. But make sure you get a SMART score of 80 on Lesson I3. Okay, I hope that made sense. I will upload the video to YouTube in just a few minutes. And I will see y'all again on Thursday. Be sure and email me if you have a problem with anything, or if you want some one-on-one instruction. I can Skype you and we can go through this live together on Skype if you need to. Thank you. Take care. See you later.